We know that people that are possessed can speak in foreign languages. They can levitate. They have superhuman power. They know deep, dark secrets of the exorcist and the people in the room. I mean, you're talking about some superhuman abilities, psychic abilities, supernatural abilities.
In today's new episode of Crawlspace, we speak with return guest Maxim W. Furek about the Smurl haunting, a crazy story about a haunted house out of Pennsylvania. Lance, what'd you think of this story?
Well, I love having Maxim on. This is the second time that he's joined us. I love the fact that we can start off a conversation about a project he's worked on. He bangs out books like it's his job, which it is, but he is a really prolific writer and he's really good at what he does. But we always end up going down these little tangents, which I love. So the Smurl haunting is where we start and then we revisit it throughout the conversation, but we get into some other things as well. Love the conversation, and yeah, he's welcome to come back on anytime.
Absolutely. He's a really interesting fellow with a lot of great stories, and you can check out more of his work and get all of his books at his website, maximfurek.com.
And you mentioned that the Smurl haunting happened in Pennsylvania. It did happen between 1974 and 1989. So this is something that went for a long time. The Smurl family claimed that a demon, specifically a demon, was haunting their house.
Okay, so please follow us on social media at Crawlspace Podcast or Crawlspace Pod. We're going to break quick for commercial here, and we'll be right back with Maxim Furek to speak about the Smurl haunting.
And thanks to our sponsors, we are back with Maxim Furek.
Welcome back to the podcast, Maxim Furek. Maxim, in today's new episode of Crawlspace, we speak with return guest Maxim W. Furek about the Smurl haunting, a crazy story about a haunted house out of Pennsylvania. Lance, what do you think of this story?
Well, I love having Maxim on. This is the second time that he's joined us. I love the fact that we can start off a conversation about a project he's worked on. He bangs out books like it's his job, which it is, but he is a really prolific writer and he's really good at what he does. But we always end up going down these little tangents, which I love. So the Smurl haunting is where we start and then we revisit it throughout the conversation, but we get into some other things as well. Love the conversation, and yeah, he's welcome to come back on anytime.
Absolutely. He's a really interesting fellow with a lot of great stories, and you can check out more of his work and get all of his books at his website, maximfurek.com.
And you mentioned that the Smurl haunting happened in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, my
it did happen between 1974 and 1989. So this is something that went for a long time. The Smurl family claimed that a demon, specifically a demon, was haunting their house.
Okay, so please follow us on social media at Crawlspace Podcast or Crawlspace Pod. We're going to break quick for commercial here, and we'll be right back with Maxim Furek to speak about the Smurl haunting.
There were all kinds of paranormal anomalies surrounding Shepton, out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, afterlife experiences, plus alien creatures and all the rest. That was the book that opened up the door. Again, I didn't go looking for the paranormal. I was a rock journalist, and I was a good, passionate rock journalist. But doors opened.
Thanks to our sponsors, we are back with Maxim Furek. And thanks to our sponsors, we are back with Maxim
the Australian
Furek.
Mysterious Universe for a 90-minute program, and on and on and on. So again, it just was meant to be something followed me, stalked me, hit me over the head, and, conjured me, whatever. But that's my story. I didn't go looking for the paranormal. It found me.
We had you on a couple of months ago to talk about your book, The Lost Tribes of Bigfoot, which was a really fun conversation. And you've got a new book that has come out since that last conversation.
I had written a book called Coal Region Hoodoo, Paranormal Tales from Inside the Pit. And that's been my big one. That's been the big seller. And the toughest thing for guys like me is to get reviews on Amazon. For all of us authors, it helps the algorithm. It's the best thing that you could do. If any of your listeners buy any of my books, put a review on Amazon. It changes things. It opens doors. It just it makes the God smile. So yeah, in Co-Regent Hoodoo, I had a chapter on the Smurl haunting. I decided that the time was right to follow that up, that chapter, with a whole book. And I had heard that the Conjuring franchise was going to have their last one, supposedly. Lance, when you were talking about the love-hate relationship, one thing you got to love is the $2.7 billion net. I'm saying net, not gross, net, that Conjuring franchise has. And man, that's telling us something. Somebody's going to the movies and seeing this, whether they like it or not. They're paying the price of admission. Certainly, Conjuring Last Rites is not as good as Sinners, is not as good as Weapons, is not as good as Bring Her Back. And your listeners, if they haven't seen those, check it out. Bring Her Back is incredible. A great horror movie, as well as Weapons. These are great. These are wonderful, wonderful horror movies. And, horror is an art form, and not everybody gets it right. Certainly with Conjuring Last Rites, they just use the template. They have a lot of fans of Ed and Lorraine, Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. They have their own fans and their own following. So, the movie was destined to do well at the box office. But, as far as in the genre of horror movies, it wasn't that good. And as far as authenticity, I'm going to tell you that it was not authentic. Again, I'm from northeastern Pennsylvania. I went up there to West Pittston to see the frenzy and to talk to the neighbors and to do my research. And I met Ed and Lorraine in 1988 when they were on the road promoting the book The Haunted, which is about the West Smurl thing. And I was also there in Gettysburg, Friday, July the 11th, where I met Dan Rivera 2 days before he died. So I felt once again that something was, working through me, channeling through me to write this book. Almost like I was, this sounds ridiculous, but it sounds like I was chosen to write it. But basically, I was at the right place at the right time. So anyway, it's a good book, and we've been getting a lot of nice reviews about it.
Can we go back to the family? Can we talk about the Smurls and how it all started for them, whether it is authentic or not, just where their story starts?
Whether it's authentic or not, in their minds, the whole family, something horrible was happening. They thought that there were demons in the house. And what happened in Pennsylvania? 1972, we had the Agnes flood. This hurricane came up, drenched northeastern Pennsylvania, took a right, went out to the Atlantic, got all this water, and came back and gave us a double shot. So northeastern Pennsylvania got pummeled. Wilkes-Barre got flooded out. So the Smurl family relocated from the Wilkes-Barre area to West Pittston. So that's a very nice little village, nice people, nice family values and all that. So they moved into this duplex. So Jack and Janet and their 2 daughters were there, and then they had 2 other daughters, but they were on one side. Jack's parents were on the other, and then things started to happen. Lance and Tim, you've heard this story before, with haunted houses, the smells, the grunts, the brand new television that exploded, the chandelier that fell down and almost killed one of the girls, the rooms where the temperature was maybe 30, 40 degrees, a room that had a furnace, had access to heating. So it started to get worse and worse. The Smurls, Jack and Janet, were devout Christians. They were Catholics. They told the church what happened. So the priest would go over there and do a blessing of the house. That didn't work. The priest spent the night there. They had the house exorcised. Every Catholic diocese has a priest who's schooled in the art of exorcism, and so that Smurl house, the priest did that. Nothing happened. So finally, after things getting worse and worse and worse, Janet had seen a TV program with the Warrens, so she reached out to Ed and Lorraine. They came to West Pittston, and they stayed there. I think it was for 4 nights. They had a nurse with them who was a psychic. They had their photographer with them because they were into the PR as well, which, a lot of people took their shots at Ed and Lorraine for promoting themselves. But they did that well. But anyway, Ed Warren was a amateur exorcist, I would call him, self-taught, and he wasn't able to do anything. So at that point, Ed reached out to Father McKenna. And Father McKenna was from Monroe, Connecticut, and he came there to the Smurl house, and he performed 3 exorcisms. None of them worked. Now, McKenna was interesting because if you know anything about Catholicism, Pope John the 23rd had a thing called Vatican II. And Vatican II was a way to modernize the church. It was our kumbaya moment that we would embrace, atheists and Jews and Muslims, everybody. We would re-embrace women and the working class. And this was a way to go and modernize the church, to allow the church to say Mass in languages other than Latin. But Father McKenna was what was called a rogue priest. And he was from Monroe, Connecticut. He refused to go along with Vatican II. So he denounced that and started his own church. So anyway, Father McKenna came to the Smurl house, wasn't able to do anything. And at that point, the bishop in northeastern Pennsylvania, Bishop Timlin, requested that Father Amorth Treble from New York State come down and try to perform an exorcism to get rid of this demon. And it took 4 exorcisms before he was able to cleanse the Smurl house. So you had a whole procession of priests, of clairvoyants, of exorcists who took who each took their time to try to go and cleanse the house. And it was Father Amorth who was the one who finally got it done. So I understand that not everybody believes this, and it sort of fits in with my theory of 90. 30% of the people are true believers, 30% do not believe, and 30% could care less. They're on the fence, on the bias. They're out, doing whatever, taking care of their own thing. So I'm not trying to convince anybody over to my side, but I believe that evil exists. I believe that the devil exists. And, I believe that there's a realm of demonology. And that's what my book is all about.
What does it mean when you say that the house was exorcised 3 times and nothing happened? Does it mean that they showed up and they did the things and brought holy water and then waited a little bit and then all of these occurrences kept continuing? And then what does it take to finally have a successful exorcism?
Well, that's a good question, but I'll answer that with Father Alphonse Treble, and I talk about this in my book, but he went to the Hinsdale House in New York State, and that's in the western part of the state, right down from Buffalo. Father Treble went there and tried to perform an exorcism, and he couldn't. And he said, his quote was something like, "You tell the people inside to take your belongings and leave. Don't say where you're going, just leave. Some places are demonic. Some places are just a gateway to hell." The Hinsdale House was one of them. Father Treble was not able to go and cleanse the Hinsdale House. Even today, you could go there to the Hinsdale House, and for a price, you could spend the night there. It's almost like a bed and breakfast, a demonic bed and breakfast. So again, I believe that there's a realm of demonology. I believe that there's entities out there, whether they're ghosts, spirits, or demons, looking for vulnerable, naive people. I do these lectures, all over the place, and I tell especially younger people, be careful of what you do, especially the people the ghost hunters that go into abandoned mental institutions or prisons looking for these entities. Be careful of what you're looking for, buyer beware, because actually in early this year, I was invited out to the Butler Paranormal Conference in Western Pennsylvania. The Psychic Vincent sisters were there. So they were doing their presentation, and the guy in the front row was a ghost hunter, and here he had been attacked by a demon. He thought it was a demon. In the night, his chest was all scratched up. Claw marks. His eyeball was just hanging out. He showed these pictures on his iPhone. The Psychic Vincent sisters believed that it was a form of infestation, that this demon found him, during his vulnerable period and infested him and started to plague him with all of these horrible things. So they said that the only thing that could cleanse you from that would be holy water and the crucifix and all the symbols, of Christianity. It's not just a Christian thing. I've recently met a woman who she's Lebanese and she works over in the Middle East, and I'm going to contact her, and she wanted to talk to me about the Islamic exorcism, which she says is similar to the Christian exorcism. And now when we say Christian, it's pretty much predominantly Catholic, because Protestants, I believe, have given up on exorcism maybe back in the 1600s. So I think Catholics and Protestants may, and again, I'm no theologian, so, get a second opinion, but I think that Protestants may look at the realm of evil in a different light. I don't know. I don't know. I know what I know, and that's very little. So anyway, I'm looking forward to learning more about the Islamic exorcism and how they view evil and demons and all that. We talk about the difference between Catholicism and the Protestant religion, and yet there's probably a whole lot more of commonality and similarity. And it may be the same thing with Islam, but I'm certainly looking forward to finding out about that. But yeah, I think that there's danger there. And another thing, when I warn people about things like seances, tarot cards, Ouija boards, fortune tellers, be careful. And the way I understand it, people that are knowledgeable about Ouija boards will use that as a gateway to contact a certain spirit, a spirit that will guide them, a spirit that will give them answers. That seems to be a helpful way of using a Ouija board, as opposed to the rest of the world that will just go and get onto a Ouija board and try to invoke something. And you don't know what's going to manifest. It could be good or it could be evil. It could be a lost, confused ghost, or it could be a malevolent spirit. This whole realm of demonology and the spirit world is just so fascinating. The thing that rings true to me is that when you look at the data, the exorcists and the people that get into this, they all have the same thing to say. For example, there seems to be a progression with possession, and that spirit, it might be the temptation, then the infestation, and then the possession. We know that we believe that demonic forces can infest people, places, or things. And, look at the Annabelle doll. We know that people that are possessed can speak in foreign languages. They can levitate. They have superhuman power. They know deep, dark secrets of the exorcist and the people in the room. You're talking about some superhuman abilities, psychic abilities, supernatural abilities. And again, when you look at the records of these exorcists and you compare them, the notes are pretty much the same. So that tells us something.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor.
And a thank you to our sponsors. Back to the program.
So why, in your opinion, do these religious symbols seem to work?
Boy, that's a good question. Boy, I don't know. I just think that somebody like me, look, I got my Padre Pio holy water. I got my crucifix. I think when you do this stuff, if you're a paranormal researcher or a ghost hunter, I think if you're solid in the spirit of the Lord, I think if you're filled with God's grace, all these things, all these symbols, I think you're on firm ground. That's important. I think a lot of people aren't, and they're just naive and they're just not really focused. So I just think that if you're going to do any of this thing, I think you need to be prepared for it. But again, the crucifix, the holy water, the incense, this has been part of those rituals for thousands of years. They have to have some kind of credence, some kind of credibility. They have to work on some level. So, I don't know what level that is, but what else do we have,
Maybe it's not so much the actual cross itself, but it could be any object, as long as the person believes in what is behind that object. Strong enough to show the malevolent spirit that the belief of whatever is stronger than this thing.
And again, that makes sense to me. When we talk about the realm of demonology and the existence of good and evil and all that, there's just so many ways to look at that. I think those symbols make sense. And you're right, they do have a certain kind of power, and psychologists talk about the fetish, which is something that we attribute powers to, whether it's a sexual fetish or a religious fetish. And we've seen these with religions since, the beginning of time. So, it makes sense that you might carry around a crucifix or a copy of the Bible or the four-leaf clover. Whatever that is, it's something that sort of gives you hope and optimism. And maybe that's exactly what we need to do as human beings. We need to stay in that lane where we're optimistic, we're hopeful that that we're going to have better days. And if a prayer, if a belief, if a faith, if a symbol helps bring us to that point, then good for us. Good for the person that is able to find that, unlock that, find that key, to unlock that door.
I'm curious, just in contrast, want to mention the possibility of this not being a demonic possession at all, or being mental illness or mass hallucinations.
It's not so much what I have to say about it. If you take a look at Father Amorth, he was the Vatican's exorcist. For your listeners out there, there's a motion picture called The Pope's Exorcist, starring Russell Crowe. But Father Amorth addressed that question. And in my book, The Smurl Haunting, I have a chapter called The 2%. Father Amorth said that when somebody shows up having been possessed, the church has to determine whether or not it's an actual demonic possession or if it's mental illness. So they have to weed out the people that are mentally ill, whether it's schizophrenia or Tourette's or bipolar. And Father Amorth said that only 2% of the people are the ones that he's interested in. They're the ones that have legitimate demonic possession. Has the church made mistakes in the past? Well, they certainly have. And one mistake was in Germany. There was a woman named Anneliese. They thought that she was possessed, and they performed the exorcisms, and she died. And the German courts arrested, held on trial the Anneliese's parents and also the two priests that were responsible for this. But what happened was Germany no longer allows exorcisms, by the Catholic Church or any other church because of this death of this woman. So, we're cautious. The church is cautious about what they do, and the church has to be cautious about people that are just needy and they're looking for something, some kind of salvation. They have to make sure that the people that they're dealing with are actually possessed by a demonic force. Again, what I said earlier, when somebody is possessed by a demon, we know that they have superhuman powers.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. In the book, there's a part about Janet levitating about 6 feet off of her bed and then I guess getting thrown across the room. Can you tell me about that documentation? Like, how is that proven to have happened? And then have you seen that in other cases, like as case studies?
The levitation seems to be sort of common. We've seen that in other infestations. Well, first of all, Jack Smurl claimed that he was raped by a female demon, a succubus. And that was captured in the movie The Last Rites, Conjuring Last Rites. Janet claimed that she was also sexually molested. But as far as being thrown against the wall, that was Simon the German Shepherd. Simon was lifted up and levitated and thrown against the wall. In Conjuring Last Rites, they had Judy Warren sort of responsible for that. And of course, that was totally untrue. That was fictionalized. Judy wasn't there. In the real story, Dawn Smurl witnessed the dog Simon being levitated and thrown against the wall. Here's the thing. That was either demonic possession, demonic forces doing that, or here's another theory. Dawn was demonstrating psychokinetic energies. And we know about those from Stephen King. Firestarter, Carrie, The Shining, talking about adolescent people, typically female, who have these feelings, these adolescent feelings, this angst, energy, this anger, and they don't know how to control it. And it's possible, again, it's a theory, that Dawn Smurl actually levitated Simon and threw it against the wall. Not that she was trying to hurt the dog, but just that she had this ability that she wasn't able to control. So demonic infestation, psychokinetic energies. I don't think it was it could have been a hallucination on her part. So that's another one that just list the possibilities. And since that Smurl house has had so many different aspects of the paranormal, the dog levitating just fits in with all of that, so that makes sense to me. But again, I don't have proof. I wasn't there. Nobody has the proof. You either believe or you don't.
And how long did the Smurls stay in the home?
The book, The Haunted, was written in 1988. I think the press was called in around 1986, 85. And again, there was it started out light and then it got heavier and heavier as far as the attacks, the demonic attacks. They went on a camping trip. Evidently, these demons followed them, and things were happening. So it wasn't just the house. So, again, demonic forces could infest people, places, or things. Lorraine, at the end, felt that there were 4 entities there. One was a demon that was sort of the puppet master, and there was, I think, an old man, a young woman, or an old woman. There were, I think, 3 other people that this demon was manipulating to cause havoc, to do different things. So that was Lorraine's take on this. And Lorraine was interesting. She would go into a room and lay down on the bed and try to feel these energies. She was a clairvoyant. They had news conferences there with the local paper. The papers covered it extensively. With the Smurl haunting, when Ed and Lorraine came to town, I got permission from the Times Leader, the Wilkes-Barre's leading newspaper, to run some of the photographs that they had of Ed and Lorraine, and also of Jack and Janet, which was really nice. I mean, they're awesome photos, and this was back when it was happening, so that was kind of cool. The thing of it is, the Smurl haunting isn't just about the Smurl haunting. I take a look at the Smurl haunting and compare it with other houses allegedly with demonic entities. The Amityville Horror, the Hinsdale House, and the Wells House. And I take a look at Amityville because it's the most infamous. It's the one story that we can't let go. It's the modern day version of Cain and Abel, where a young man, a 23-year-old man, Butch DeFeo, took a rifle and killed his mother, killed his father, killed his sister, 2 sisters and his 2 brothers. A wealthy kid who would walk around with thousands of dollars in his pocket, who would drive new cars. They lived in Amityville, in the affluent part of Long Island. We can't let this one go. And if you were to go and Google Amityville, you're going to see a ton of books, and you're going to see a ton of motion pictures. It's a cottage industry. It's a cash cow. And the fact that after the bloodletting, George and Kathy Lutz, who bought High Hopes, the Amityville house, for $80,000, lived there for, I think it was 28 days, and then left because of the demonic attacks. I read Jay Anston's The Amityville Horror twice. It's not a good book. The last chapter was good, but the book was sloppy. And the reason for that is he was transcribing like hours and hours and hours of tape-recorded notes from George and Kathy Lutz. So that's how the Amityville Horror was written. Doesn't matter that it wasn't written well, and it wasn't. But it sold millions and millions of copies. The last that we heard was that George Lutz's attorney, over 2 bottles of wine, claimed that he made this up. Well, here's what I'm saying. I don't believe that. I think that he wrote a book and said that he made it up and he made money. It doesn't matter what you write about Amityville, it's going to sell. The 3 of us could write about time traveling back to High Hopes and doing that or whatever and write a book and it's going to sell. So Amityville is almost like a trademark.
I read the book as well, and I came to the conclusion that George Lutz was full of crap when he wrote he knew something was wrong with his wife because they usually would make love every single night, but they were only making love like once a week now. Yeah. I'm like, you have 3 kids, you just moved into a home, and you're not like getting it on every single night, dude? Like, you're full of crap. Everything you're saying is garbage at this point. That never happened. You did mention, you called him Butch. DeFeo, and that is actually Ronald DeFeo Jr.
Correct.
And he's the one that shot his dad, shot his siblings, then claimed that his sister. He then claimed that he only shot his mother and father, right? And then said his sister killed the other 2 siblings, and then he killed her, and then he died in prison.
Yeah, it got complicated because of his lies. But here's the thing. This is what's interesting. Talk about demonic possession. I read Amityville Horror twice, read High Hopes, and that was written by the prosecutor. Butch DeFeo claimed that he killed his family because he was possessed by a demon. So in a court of law, the prosecution had to prove that Butch DeFeo was not possessed by a demon, but that he had a personality disorder, that he had no empathy for fellow human beings, and he had a need for immediate gratification. So that's what they had to prove in a court of law, and that's what they did. did. And this is pretty interesting. And I talk about this in the Smurl haunting, but I compare the Smurl haunting with Amityville and this whole realm of demonology, the rite of exorcism, all of that stuff. I mean, it is very fascinating stuff. And, as a paranormal guy who's written books about Bigfoot and flying saucers and ghosts and all this, it's the realm of demonology that really pushes my buttons and just like really gets me excited, because it's almost like that's where the action is. It's down to that age-old debate on whether or not evil exists and the devil and the power and all that stuff. I mean, it's, fascinating stuff. And I've been warned by my evangelical Christian friends not to get too close to the flame. And I don't. I look at this as an academic. I mean, I'm just trying to find, like everybody else, I'm trying to find answers. There's an Indiana Jones in all of us. We're all looking for the Holy Grail, and we want to climb the mountain. And I think that's what all of us are trying. And that's all I'm trying to do. I want to see what's around the corner. So, that's my motivation. Again, I'm not a true believer. I'm a skeptic. I'm looking for answers. That's me. And I consider myself an academic, and I do consider myself a serious researcher of the paranormal. The thing I want to do is, I might have said this the last time I was on the Crawlspace, was that I'd like to try to define the paranormal in a better way. I'd like to go and present it to the scientific community and to the public in a way that we get more respect, because a lot of people look at us as crazy zealots. That we're just, whatever. I mean, just it's not good.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor.
And a thank you to our sponsors. Back to the program.
I appreciate you saying that. I will say I don't think you come off like a crazy zealot. I think you're very open-minded, and I think that's what's most important, because even with the crime cases we talk about, if there's no known answer and you're like 100% sure of one thing, that's a little too much, too focused. So keeping an open mind is very important in all this stuff. I'm curious though about Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now I know you were friends with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So around 1988, that book came out. Ed and Lorraine were embarking on a 15-city book tour. They went to a place called Jim Thorpe, a very touristy little place in northeastern Pennsylvania. I got so excited. I wrote a letter to the owner of the Victorian Theater where they were going to be and got permission to interview them and take pictures. The pictures that I have in the Smurl haunting are the pictures I took of Ed and Lorraine in 1988. I hung out with them, and we were hanging out in July, I think it was, 1988, on the sidewalks of Jim Thorpe, and we're talking demonology and good and evil. It was really kind of cool. And I really wish I could go back in time and do it again. I'd probe further, but I would call them over the years. I kept in contact with them, and I would ask Ed especially additional questions about how he did battle with the demons and all that. Lorraine was an animal lover. A lot of times she would answer the phone and you could hear her pet rooster in the back. They were kind. They mentored me. They held my hand on, and I like them. And I think that they were stand-up people, as opposed to a lot of other people that don't like Ed and Lorraine for all the obvious reasons. Some people are jealous of their success. Some people are taking a shot at them because they were commercially successful, and they were making $5,000 a seminar, and they did something like close to 1,000 seminars at college campuses. So that's a lot of money for back in the 80s and 90s. And people castigate them for that success. But, we live in the United States of America. We're all, I think a lot of us are reaching for that silver ring, that gold ring, and just trying to go and, tap into the system. If you do it right, if you have a product that is marketable, if you can go and promote it, you're going to get people that'll sign on and buy and invest in your product. And Ed and Lorraine Warren were able to do that. So some of the pagans and the Wiccans don't like Ed and Lorraine because, and at least in paganism, they believe that dark energies surround us and that it's our job to go and coexist with these dark energies, whether they're demonic or whatever, coexist with them. sort of like Jungian. In Christianity, it's pretty much black or white. You're either good or you're bad. It's either God or the devil. So there's no in between. But with pagans, they look at those gray shades. The pagans that I talk to don't like Ed and Lorraine because they're very well defined and they omit the shades of gray. So again, it's just another perspective. And again, with the pagans, I mean, before Christianity, we had pagans and the Wiccans. They believed that God was in everything, in the trees and the stars and the sky and everything. So, it was nothing demonic. It wasn't satanic. And the pagans believed that, as the Wiccans do, that you could either lead through the right pathway of helping and healing, or through the left pathway where you would put the spell and the pox on someone. The problem is with the karma. No matter what you do, it's going to come back on you either threefold or tenfold. So if you do good, you'll get it back. And if you do evil, well, you'll taste that bitter bile as well.
Well, you mentioned that you do believe in evil and you do believe in the devil. I'm curious if you have any idea or any conception of what the devil looks like. How does the devil present itself?
It could be in the guise of this beautiful, statuesque woman, with the nice brown eyes and the long hair and the seduction and all that. I mean, that could be the devil. The devil comes in many shapes and sizes and forms. It starts with the temptation. So whatever your temptation is, whatever vulnerability you have, that's probably what's going to get inside your crawl.
Do you think that you've ever seen anything that you'd consider to be the devil?
As a college student, we decided to do a seance. And this was totally stupid, and I'm embarrassed to even admit it, but we thought we would want to go and conjure up the devil just to give us a sign and not to, possess us, but just to give us a sign. And I know it was stupid. It was adolescent. It was like moronic. But anyway, we're in the seance and the candle, all of a sudden, like everybody's like screaming, the candle burned down so that it looked like it was the horns. The candle wax. It was like the two horns. So we shut that down. And ice cold terror. Again, call it what you will. Doesn't matter, how you perceive it. I know how I perceived it. It was terrifying. It was horrific. I never did it again. It was just a stupid thing. I mean, asking the devil to go and show up and say howdy. I mean, come on, how dumb and naive is that? But it wasn't just me. It was me and my buddies, and we thought that would be a lot of fun. So, but I never did it again, and I don't think he attached himself to me. So, but I think there's portals, and again, whether it's Ouija boards or seances or whatever, I think that there's portals to the demonic world. We need to be cautious about that, educated, and I think we also need to have those symbols, whatever those symbols of Christianity or God or whatever symbol of goodness that you need to take with you. I think you need to have those as well, because I think that they help protect us. It's frightening when you see the amount of people that are ghost hunting, and I think they're young and they're naive, and I think bad things could happen.
You mentioned before that there is a difference between ghosts and demons. Can you explain that difference to us?
Like, for example, in Gettysburg, that's a good example. You have all of these ghosts, these spirits that may be wondering. Maybe they don't know that they're dead. Maybe they're just looking for the next place to go. Maybe they're mischievous. Maybe they're sending us messages. So there's that entity. And then there's the ones that are more malicious, and those are the demons that are looking to actually possess vulnerable people. That's the real problem here, with the demonic possession.
Are demons past humans, or were they ever human?
Boy, I don't know. I mean, I don't know, I can't think that through. It could be a past human that's been infested by the devil and is doing the devil's dirty work. I mean, I'm sure that's where the power and motivation comes from. So it's demonic. I think there's a realm there of demons. I think there's a battle going on. The battle's always been going on. But the devil wants us to think that he or she doesn't exist, that it's just a myth. And some people say that, well, believing the devil is old-fashioned. It's just something our parents and the church said to keep us in line. If you don't say your prayers, if you don't go to church, you're going to go to hell, or the devil's going to get you. So I think we were raised with a lot of threats. And at this point, I think a lot of people are rebelling against those threats, which they believe aren't valid.
Is there a house or a location that is currently reported to be haunted that you're curious about?
In northeastern Pennsylvania, there's the Wells House, that it's believed that someone put a voodoo curse on the original owner. And that is a place that's still there, that's still being investigated. And I think there's something, noteworthy there. Also, the Hinsdale House that I'm, really wanted to go up there and see it, but I don't think I should. I either don't find anything there or I find something that might be demonic. So I don't think I'm going to go, but that's in Western New York. Again, I get warned by my friends all the time. Don't get too close. Don't get suckered in. And I don't dance with the devil. I don't ask the devil for favors or gifts or orgies or anything else. I mean, we don't need that. I don't need that. And I don't do that. So, but I know that there's people that do, and they may make a pact with the devil to get things, to get, I don't know, power or whatever it is that they're asking for. And, but there's a price to pay for that. So
what if the devil offered you, here, sign my book. All of a sudden your book sales will reach that of Stephen King, will reach that of James Patterson. Would you be a little tempted?
Well, I'll tell you what, the reason that I'm, so righteous right now is that I've never really been tempted. My friend Rick was a project manager, and it was around Christmas or New Year's, and he's gone with the guy. Rick would sign off on all the blueprints, and the guy handed him an envelope, and Rick went to his car, and here it's an envelope filled with hundreds. It was a bribe, for Rick to just sign off on the blueprints. He went up to the guy and said, "Sorry, I can't take this," but I've never been in that position where somebody handed me, something like that. I would hope that I would have the character to say no, but that's a really good question. We don't know. I mean, when was the last time somebody handed you $100,000 to do something illegal?
Yesterday.
Only 100,000?
Whatever you want to, But that's a question of morality and, what you believe. And I could claim I'm good right now just because I haven't been presented with that. So I don't know. But interesting question.
Now, earlier you mentioned the Ouija board and how people have got to be careful with it, and I agree. But you mentioned sort of a way to approach it to have it work for you. Can you explain that a little bit more?
And this comes to me from people that are pagan practitioners. And they say that there's nothing wrong with the Ouija board as long as you know how to utilize it. And you could utilize it for education and for help, for signs. And I don't know, evidently that Ouija board is a portal to something else, to maybe a world of spirituality, another dimension where there may be entities there that know things that we don't. So that's what my friend was saying about the Ouija board and how he utilizes it. So again, just be cautious if you're going to go and invoke spirits, to show up and manifest. You don't know what you're going to get. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of unknowns out there. I don't have a whole lot of answers. All I do know is that there's a lot of danger out there. So just, be cautious, be aware. Don't be naive and don't be stupid. And
getting back to the Smurls, did their story have a happy ending? Without giving anything away in your book. There's
nothing to give away. The Father Amorth cleansed the house, and that was the happy ending. The problem was that with The Haunted, the book, they never talked about Father Amorth because the book came in 1988 and he did his last exorcisms later. So that book wasn't complete. And the other thing I know, as a writer, I was beating up on the Amityville Horror only because it wasn't well written. And the last chapter was, I don't know what Jay Anston did with the last chapter, but I thought this is really good. It was not the same kind of prose that he used in the rest of the book. It was different and it was good. Same thing with The Haunted with Robert Curran. His prose was good because he was a professional. He was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize for investigative journalism, but he also had contributions from Jack and Janet Smurl, who were not reporters. They were not writers. They were people that were traumatized. And he had contributions from Ed and Lorraine Warren. And God knows they weren't journalists because every book that allegedly they wrote was ghost written by somebody else. There would be a book written by Ed and Lorraine Warren. Well, no, they didn't write anything. It was written by somebody else. I look at myself in hindsight And, I don't know why I never said to Ed and Lorraine, could we co-write a book? I mean, that's like the first thing somebody like me would say, but I missed that boat. I don't know why I never said that. Anyway, the Haunted was a potpourri of different kinds of writing. And, so it wasn't, held together by a strong thread. Even though people bashed Robert Curran, said that he did not abide by journalistic standards. He was one-sided, didn't look at all the sides and all this stuff. I mean, they were horrible. But still, the book sold millions. The book was serialized in, Red Book, the women's magazine. And there was a Fox program on about that called The Haunted. So the book did well. It made millions. It made money for Jack and Janet Smurl. I don't know how much, but they went on the talk shows, and they went out to Chicago and New York City with Ed and Lorraine, and did book signings and presentations. So their publisher took them on the road. So there was money there. And I forget what the press run was, but I mean, it was impressive. You know that you have a winner when it resonates, when your publisher prints millions, and when they take you on the road, all of that stuff. So with the Smurl Haunting from 1988, I mean, this was big time. And even though a lot of people didn't remember it, so here comes Conjuring Last Rites, and it's the Smurl House Part 2. It was fictitious. The only thing that they got right was the frenzy there on West Chase Street in West Pittston. Because, I was there. I saw what was happening. It was just crazy stuff with the media. You have to feel sorry for the Smurls, because they were allegedly being terrorized by these demonic forces. They were being terrorized and tormented by a public that believed that they were just doing this to make money, and also by a media. And Janet Smurl talked about the hundreds and hundreds of phone calls she would get from international journalists who wanted an exclusive interview. They were terrorized. They were frustrated that people didn't believe them, but they had a strong faith, and they leaned on their church for support. And thanks to their church, I think that helped them, the community of their church helped them get by.
Well, thank you so much, Max, for joining us here today. We really appreciate your time and your insight into all these topics. It's really interesting, and it gives us a way to just have these conversations, which I think is a lot of fun for us. So thank you for spending some time with us, and thanks for writing a great book.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And for the listeners, it's The Smurl Haunting, when Ed and Lorraine came to town, and you could check it out on my website. It's www.maximfurek.com. So thanks for this opportunity.